Speaker Johnson is out there, and they are desperate to both have their cake and eat it too. They have passed a budget resolution. This process is gonna take until September, without a doubt. And the budget resolution is like broad strokes. It assigns responsibility from specific committees, which have programs under their auspices, and says, from your programs, you must cut $880 billion, it says to one committee, and that committee happens to oversee Medicaid. And nothing else they have in terms of expenditures even comes close to Medicaid. And there's been discussions, it's not in the document, we're all in favor of cutting this from Medicaid. So here is Speaker Johnson basically trying to argue, well, the word Medicaid is not in the budget resolution. Of course it's not going to be. It never is. Go ahead.
I challenge you or anybody on your staff, do a word search for Medicaid on the resolution that we passed last night. You will not find it. That is not part of this equation, okay? We're talking about finding efficiencies in every program, but not cutting benefits for people who rightly deserve that. Work requirements for Medicaid. That is something that is public opinion polls almost 90%. You don't want able-bodied workers on a program that is intended, for example, for single mothers with 2 small children who's just trying to make it. That's what Medicaid is for, not for 29-year-old males sitting on their couches playing video games. We're going to find those guys and we're going to send them back to work. That's what everybody supports. That's what the Republicans are for. And by the way, we find dignity in our work. That's going to be good for everybody.
Pause it for a second. I'm quite sure if you were to search the budget resolution, it wouldn't say anything about dignity for work or work requirements for Medicaid. I mean, so clearly this is part of their agenda.
But can I just say this just really quickly? It's just really frustrating because it wouldn't say Medicaid regardless. The bill essentially directs the Energy and Commerce Committee, which oversees Medicaid, to look at $880 billion in cuts, which implies that committee, which a massive part of the budget that they oversee is Medicaid, that the cuts have to come from there to make it mathematically work. He's such a liar.
Oh, it's a total lie. And let's also be clear, when he says, who's qualified, they're going to kick millions of people off of Medicaid. And I mentioned this earlier, but this is not the first time they've had this idea of work requirements for Medicaid on a federal level. Georgia has done it on a state level. It was a disaster. They are 75% short of where they say they should be in terms of enrollment because the process is so complicated and Byzantine that people who should be eligible for Medicaid, who are working, are not, because their system is just so messed up. Plus, it ended up costing hundreds of millions of dollars more because you got to impose these mechanisms in which to determine this. But the CBO analyzed a federal bill from the Republicans in 2023. It was a work requirement bill. It would cut spending by $109 billion over 10 years. And therefore throw out 1.5 million Medicaid beneficiaries on an annual basis. Just to be clear, they're looking for $880 billion worth of cuts. And by imposing work requirements, the CBO analyzed a bill. It provided only $109 billion worth of savings. So they will have to start with work requirements for everybody, including the 29-year-olds eating Cheetos on their couch, and then figure out how they're going to multiply that times 8. It's a lie. It's a total lie. States would lose federal Medicaid funding for able-bodied adults ages 19 to 55 without dependents. That's what the bill was. Just what he said there. And that covered 1/8 of the amount that they want to cut from Medicaid. And just that 1/8 kicked 1.5 million Medicaid beneficiaries off their plan. That was the plan they had. That's how it was scored by the CBO. And then, of course, there would be some states who would cover it cover it themselves. And so the cost is just being shifted to places where they can't, where it's harder to pay for it, essentially. Federal government, much easier to pay for it. All right. Here's the other thing that's going on. Now, remember, with the budget resolution that they passed this week, that is for a budget that's not going to go into effect for over a year now. In the meantime, we are 13 days out, 14 days out from a government shutdown. The only thing that they're going to be able to do in this instance, or it remains to be seen, hopefully Democrats won't participate in this because the president has shown he doesn't abide by budgets anyways. They could pass a continuing resolution, which is basically a punt. We're going to keep funding levels where they have been until this time next year or a new budget supplants it. But there's a problem with that because we have just seen over the past month a supposed spree of cuts, mostly in the form of employees, to the budget. Now, it's an obvious indication that, wait a second, this is illegal. If you have a budget, how can you cut? You've already passed the budget. How can you spend less than the budget is? Congress, well, that's one of the problems. But here's Caitlin Collins asking Mike Johnson, how do you reconcile this?
You just talked about how important the work that Elon Musk is doing is. If you pass a continuing resolution, won't that just refund all the programs that he says he's cutting that are full of waste, fraud, and abuse?
No, look, you can. That's why I say you add anomalies to a CR. You can increase some spending. You can decrease some spending. You can add language that says, for example, the dramatic changes that have been made to USAID would be reflected in the ongoing spending. It would be a clean CR, mostly, I think, but with some of those changes to adapt to the new realities here.
All right,
the
pause it. Wait a second.
Is
okay.
Less
clean CR means there's no changes. It's just we're going to do the budget that we have. But there's going to be anomalies. So in other words,
we'll let Elon cut into it if he desires.
Well, no, he's saying we're going to write into the legislation. So in other words, the clean CR is going to be dirtied up.
Right.
In other words, it's not a clean CR. And that's going to be like, they have not figured out how they're going to do this yet. It is quite clear. They have not figured out how they're going to do this yet.
The anomalies are the agenda items that they're saying are not going to be in the clean CR is basically what you're saying.
Well,
right.
The point is a clean CR means
yes,
we're just going to do a continuing resolution.
Right.
The anomalies, wrong word, are we're going to dirty up the clean resolution, the clean CR, which means that it's not a clean bill.
Right. Right. Good question by Caitlin Collins, who is like the rare person in media who has the reverse insecurity that most of like the liberal reporters do, which is that they have to act conservative. But she comes from the Daily Caller. So she's been maybe the best CNN reporter in this Trump period because she's feel like she has to prove
that she actually,
conservative bona fides. Yeah.
100%.
some of those changes to adapt to the new realities here. And the new reality is less government, more efficiency, better return for the taxpayers. And I think that's something that everybody should welcome.
Okay, a clean CR mostly, you think. We will be watching closely on that. Speaker Mike Johnson.
Okay, she's laughing at him.
Yeah.
Oh, it's a clean CR, but it's all dirtied up. I got it. Also, when you talk about return on investment, when you cut the IRS, you're losing $6 for every dollar you save.
Oh, yeah.
Those precious taxpayer dollars we hear about so much. Just
Yeah.
to on the
So
table.
much.
I mean,
So much for that return on investment.
You talk about return on investment in healthcare. You know what would be the most efficient way to provide people with healthcare is to have one single payer, being the federal government, as opposed to having some mafia middleman in the middle, pharmaceutical companies, healthcare conglomerates, and most importantly, insurance companies taking their cut and gouging people. It's almost like that might be the most efficient way to solve our healthcare issues.
Yeah, but you just say that because you're a left-wing extremist and are using the libertarian Mercatus numbers to show that it's much more efficient and cheaper for the country to go on single-payer healthcare. So,
good point. Sorry,
is that it? The Mercatus? Is that what it was? The Mercatus
so.
report?
I think that's right. Yeah.
I haven't heard that in a while, though. It's a deep
I know,
cut.
it's been a while. That was a deep cut. Hey, folks, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and check out our daily show. We do it every day at 12 p.m. Eastern for about 2.5 hours. We even take phone calls. You should check that out.